Hello, my name is Kate Hudson Hall, and thank you all for listening to Bulimia Sucks. And if you didn't know, this is a platform for people to share relatable and uplifting and inspiring conversations based on an eating disorder. And these are real stories from people who are suffering or have suffered an eating disorder, but also we talk to professionals who work with people with eating disorders. Now, before we begin, I just want to tell you about my Bulimia Sucks audiobook, which is now live on Audible and Amazon and iTunes. So if you would be interested in having a listen and checking it out, I could send you the free code to download it on Audible. So email me at katehudsonhall@gmail.com, and then I can send you the code. Then you can download it for free. And also our Patreon platform is live. And so for those of you that don't know what Patreon is, it's a way for our listeners to support us financially and allow us to continue creating content and helping people who are struggling with eating disorders. So if you'd like to know more, and if you would like to support us, you go to patreon.com/Bulimia Sucks. Now, our guest today, our returning guest today, it's very exciting, is Anita Johnson. And Anita is an international speaker. She's an author and an eating disorders professional. Anita has a Ph.D. and is a clinical psychologist and certified eating disorders specialist, and also a supervisor. And she's been working in the field of women's issues and eating disorders for over 35 years. So her wealth of knowledge is incredible. And she is also the author of the best-selling book, Eating in the Light of the Moon, and co-creator of the Light of the Moon Cafe, a series of online interactive courses and women's support circles and soul hunger workshops. She developed Hawaii's first inpatient eating disorders program, and so that was in Honolulu in Hawaii, and she is currently the clinical director of Pono Hawaii eating disorder programs with an outpatient programs on Oahu and Hawaii, and an oceanfront residential program in Maui. Oh, she's just has so much knowledge and experience. And I'd like to welcome her back. And today we are going to be talking about feminine principles. So welcome, Anita. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. We have a good time together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fabulous. Fabulous to have you back and to be learning from you. So tell us now, well, where should we begin? Feminine principles.
Well, excuse me, let's begin at the beginning.
Oh, I think that's a very good idea. That would make sense.
So, well, what is it? What are we talking about when we're talking about the feminine principle? And it's a little confusing to start off with because the language confuses us. Yeah. So the language sounds gendered, and it's not. So typically with the eating disorders, you're always dealing with a paradox. And so here we're talking about aspects of the psyche that exist in all of us, whether you're cisgendered, male, female, LGBTQ, trans, whatever. It's not restricted by gender, even though we're using the word feminine. Excuse me. So that's where it gets interesting. So the idea is that it's similar to, if I were in Asia, I would be talking about yin and yang, right? This idea that there is this polarity that exists in all of us and outside of all of us as energetic principles. So the reason I use the terms feminine and masculine is because of my Jungian training, and that where in that discipline you work a lot with dreams, And in dreams, the feminine principle shows up as a female figure, and the masculine principle shows up as a male figure when you're analyzing your dreams. And in fairy tales, it's the same thing that all, and I used to rail about this as a young feminist, because I go, wait a minute, why are all the princes getting to go out and do these things, and the princess has to just sit around and wait for the prince?
Yeah,
and I didn't realize that, no, this is not about men and women. It's about a principle within our psyche and how these aspects of ourselves interact. And so briefly, the masculine principle within all of us is that part of ourselves that is logical, linear, goal, achievement, action oriented. That's the part of ourselves that can go out into the world and get things done. That's the part of ourselves that likes things organized and orderly, that likes to make lists and checks things off the lists. Right?
Oh, we like a nice list.
We all have this part, and it's valuable. Neither side is more valuable than the other. Then we have the feminine principle within us, and that's the part of ourselves that is emotional, intuitive, instinctual, relational. It's more inner. It's concerned about the connection between all things. And so what happens, though, because of the world we live in, these two sides get imbalanced, because in our culture, there's been an imbalance for thousands of years, right? So we're applauded for our outward activities and how many letters we get after our name and how much money we have in the bank, but not so much for the depth and quality of our relationships, because the feminine principle in our culture is overvalued. And the masculine principle in our culture is overvalued and the feminine is undervalued. So when it comes to instincts, for example, we are taught to disregard what our body is trying to tell us. So we won't let ourselves eat when we are hungry, or we'll eat when we're not hungry, or we'll go when we're tired. So we're given these messages: don't pay attention to your instinctual self. And very few of us even know how to turn to it for guidance, which, as you can imagine, with eating disorders, that contributes to the whole problem, because you're not able to listen to your body, and you're not even able to trust it, and not even able to believe in the wisdom of the body. So then there's all this counting calories and fat grams and how many miles I ran and blah, 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 because what happens is we internalize this imbalance. We become cockeyed, really, because the culture is that way. And when it comes to emotions, which is one of the hallmarks of the feminine principle, we have an emotional guidance system that's not accessible to us because we've been raised in a culture that's emotionally illiterate. And so
we don't know how to tune in.
Totally. And not only that,
intuitiveness.
Not just to tune in, but we reject our emotions. We think that means that's a sign of weakness. And that to be vulnerable is not okay, without understanding that if you want a close, intimate relationship, it requires some vulnerability. Because again, this is not encouraged in our culture, this aspect of the feminine principle. And when it comes to intuition, oh my goodness, that's treated like that's craziness, right? Where are the facts? If you can't support what you're saying, then what you're saying is not valid. And so there's no understanding of other ways of knowing. And in my experience, this can be very problematic for those who struggle with disordered eating, especially those who are the embodiment of the feminine principle, right? That are living in a female body. That because that dismissal, that denial, that rejection, that devaluation gets internalized. And so we think there's something wrong with our female body if it's not performing or looking like the way a male body would. So it's not genderized, and yet it becomes that way.
Wow. Wow. So what do people do if they have an imbalance between the feminine and the masculine? So once they've understood this, then how can they take this forward and start to kind of try and rebalance between the two?
Well, again, like what I talked about. So, for example, working with your instinctual self, honoring and respecting that so that you develop interoceptive awareness, which is the capacity to read your inner states so that you recognize. Interoceptive awareness is when you say, oh, my head is pounding, or my heart is racing, or my stomach is growling. So really, in a way, the recovery process from disordered eating is in part reclaiming your instinctual nature and reclaiming the wisdom of it. So rather than following an external diet, you're eating and stopping to eat according to what your body is telling you, not what somebody else is telling you you should or shouldn't do. So it's interesting because that the recovery journey is in part, in my mind, reclaiming the feminine principle in that regard. And of course, we know that one of the reasons people struggle with disordered eating is because they're not able to identify, accept, and express their emotions clearly and directly and kindly with words. So what happens is that the disordered eating behaviors, they become a way of expressing all kinds of emotions. And so becoming emotionally literate and learning how to work with your emotions and how to communicate them is also reclaiming the feminine principle. And the same with your intuition. When you start listening to those gut reactions and exploring them as though they are as valid, not more valid, but not less valid than facts.
Yeah, and tuning into the body and being more aware, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of what your body is telling you and listening.
Yeah. And the thing is, so if you break down the feminine principle, there are multiple aspects of it. So this is where it kind of gets a lot of fun and interesting, because I've identified what I call the 4 faces of the feminine. And I just recently started I'm getting ready to launch a course in this, teaching people how to find this and how to work with this.
Oh, lovely.
And if any of your listeners are interested to get on the wait list to be notified when the course is released, you can go to lightofthemooncafe.com/4 faces.
Number 4.
Well, written out, FOUR.
Oh, FOUR, right. Right.
And so these 4 faces, they correspond with 4 different phases in a woman's life.
Yeah.
But they are not restricted to those phases because they're archetypal energies. And to back up a minute, to explain what is an archetype, because the feminine and the masculine, they're archetypes. And archetypes are images that are universal concepts. And what that means is they cross all culture and all time. So for example, if you take the concept of mother and you went all the way back in time, you would find that concept. And if you could go into the future, you would find that concept. And if you went to any culture on this planet, you would find that concept. So it's archetypal.
Yes.
And because it's archetypal, it's an energy, not a thing. and so I like to talk about mother-ing energy, for example, because we often confuse mother-ing with our biological mothers or the mothers who raised us, when really they're just expressing mother-ing energy.
Right.
They aren't it itself. And for eating disorders, it gets especially interesting because the concrete physical symbol of mothering energy is food, right? Because
Okay.
if you think of your very first, we're hardwired this way. Our very first experience on the planet when we're in distress, what are we given? The breast or the bottle, and we feel soothed. So mothering energy is that energy that exists within us and outside of us that is nurturing, comforting, and
Right.
soothing, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's a different thing when you're working with the energies and with the four faces. That's what's exciting about it, because it really doesn't matter what age you are. You have access to these different aspects of the feminine because they're archetypal. Is that making
Right.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the four faces are, and we find these in fairy tales. This is again, there's this ancient wisdom that has been embedded in the fairy tales, and the four faces are the maiden,
Right.
the mother,
Yeah.
the queen, and the
Okay.
crone.
And the crown.
Crone.
Oh, crone. Right.
So the maiden is, excuse me, it's early in the morning for me. The maiden is the energetic aspect of ourselves where we learn the secret of youth.
Right.
Now, this is where our identity first gets established. The primary question for the maiden aspect of ourselves is, who am I?
Right.
Who am I? And what is my authentic self versus how others want me to be?
Yes,
Right.
I like
so
that.
so this is when we go through this phase, this is what we're faced with. These are the important questions. However, these phases are not, they're not restricted chronologically.
Right.
So for example, you can be 80 years old, and if you are starting a new adventure or project, you want maiden energy, right? Because that's the energy of new beginnings and freedom, adventure, hope, desire.
Okay.
And your budding sexuality.
So the energetic aspect. Yeah.
Energetic aspect. Think of the maiden. Just, who am I? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? What do I want in life? Who am I really? Right? For not just who others want me to be. What do I want? What are my desires rather than my desirability? Now, for all of us, this gets messed with the culture, right? You know, if you can reflect back to that time when you were first starting to menstruate, because that's kind of the sign that you're stepping into the maiden phase of your life, right? Look at how our culture treats it as even the whole experience of menarche, which is your first menstrual cycle. At best, it's treated like no big deal. At worst, it's treated as though it's shameful. And for many of us, that's our first experience of coming into the body of a woman. And how is that treated? Like not the awe-inspiring event really that it is. And so this lack of honoring creates a vacuum for all kinds of rituals that come into play, like dieting, right? Because our culture does not provide the honor, the awe, the respect for the maiden other than how she's supposed to look to other people. And so
absolutely,
you can see how this lays the groundwork for an eating disorder. If your first experience of morphing into the body of a woman is one that's shameful, how are you going to have a positive body image? Right? So this understanding how to identify and work with this maiden energy is really pretty potent. It's a powerful thing. And if you understand, how can I describe this? If you understand its energetic constellation, and you need maiden energy, you'll know how to access it. You'll know how to bring it in. You'll know what the right questions are you need to be asking, whether it's a new relationship or a new place that you're living or a new project, or you're going off to school, even if you're 45 years old. That's maiden energy that you're needing to call upon. So this idea that exists within us and is accessible, but has often been distorted by the culture, is important to understand that it's there for you. And especially with eating disorders, the answers are inside of you. It's just a matter of learning how to access them.
Yes.
So that's the maiden.
Right. So that's the maiden. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's the mother, which again, like I said, that's, I think, one of the most important archetypes to deal with eating disorders, because part of what's required is learning how to access this energy that is about nurture and comfort. It also corresponds with, in the natural world, with summertime, just as maiden is springtime, right? Maiden is new beginnings. Mother is summertime.
Yeah.
And this is where there's growth, right? That's, if you can think of a tree, it's like, this is where it's really growing. And so we need this mothering energy to cultivate our empathy and our capacity to care, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. So where things get cockeyed in the culture is with mothering energy. It's more caring for others and leaving yourself out in the rain, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so the idea that the balance is caring for yourself, not more than you care for others, but equally, and learning how to ascertain what your needs are. What do I need? I can see what they need, but what do I need?
Yeah.
So the mothering energy needs to be directed towards yourself as well as towards others. And many people who struggle with food, the only way they know how to soothe and comfort themselves is through food. And of course, we call it comfort food, right? We say that for a reason.
Yeah.
We understand at a deep level. And there are those then that are afraid of mothering energy because they're afraid they might get too dependent on it. And then where's it going to be? So they might restrict, right?
Yeah.
They might restrict their food because it's like, I don't want to even want that.
Yeah.
So learning how to work with mothering energy. And one of the things that in this course that I taught, we learn how to develop a strong inner mother that is there for you always, whenever you need to be comforted and soothed. Because when we feel the lack of that, this is all unconscious, by the way, we're not even aware of it, but when we feel the lack of that, it gets played out in eating disorders, definitely.
Yeah.
So
that makes so much sense.
Learning how to, because what happens when you create your own inner mother, then it's sort of like creating an antenna that will attract you towards other sources of mothering and attract towards you other sources of mothering. So a lot of times if I'm working with a client and we're developing a strong inner mother and they say, oh, great, once again, I got to do it all myself. And it's like, well, not exactly. Mm-hmm. You have to create the antenna, because otherwise, how are you going to recognize the mothering energy you want and need? But truthfully, you can get mothering from your dog. You can get mothering from your husband.
Yeah.
You can get mothering from a colleague at work. You can get mothering from Mother Nature. You see, it's no accident. We don't say Father Nature, we say Mother Nature. Why? Because at a deep level, we understand how we are soothed and nurtured and nourished from nature. So again, working with this, the energetic constellation and recognizing, okay, I need someone to tell me it's okay. You're going to be okay. It's all right. I know it's hard, but when you can access that inside of you, and then you can also recognize who's the friend you're going to call, right? You're not going to call your friend who's very practical and says, well, you should do this and you should do this. No, you want to call the friend that says, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that. I can see how difficult that is for you. But you have to have this sense, this understanding of this mother archetype in order to access what it is you truly need, rather than trying to get it through eating behaviors.
Yeah, through eating or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's the mother.
That's the mother. That's the mother.
Yeah.
Then we've got the queen.
The queen. Now the queen is really pretty cool because I think until recently, this archetype has not been fully, I don't know if it's not been fully available, but it's not been fully recognized. In fairy tales, often there was the maiden, the mother, and the crone, right, in ancient times. But women and humans did not live beyond 50 until a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I remember going through this when I started getting older, and I went, okay, so I've moved out of the mother phase. Why don't I feel like a crone? Why don't I feel that? I don't. And so I really had to explore this. I went, oh yeah, there is another archetype, and that's the archetype of the queen. So if the maiden is about new beginnings and springtime, mother is about nurture and summer, and from the maiden we get the we learn about, we access the secret of youth. From the mother, we learn about nurture and nourishment.
Yeah.
And from the queen, we learn about the wisdom of the age. So the queen is about community and wholeness and completeness. Yeah. The maiden is about self. The mother is about other in terms of relationship. The queen is about your place in community, right? And it has to do with sovereignty, so that where you really deepen your sense of self as separate, but as a part of the community, right? And so I started looking at, so the queen is, the questions for the queen are like, how do I heal? And how what feeds my soul and what makes me whole, right? So there's a quote from Marianne Williamson that I like because it reminds me of the queen. And she says, to be born a girl is a gift we are given. To become a real woman of wisdom and courage is a gift we bring to the world. Right? So that's queen. You can feel it. That's queen energy, right?
Yeah.
You take your experiences and you integrate them and you become more whole unto yourself, but you don't just keep it for yourself, right? This is something you also share. You have now wisdom that you share with the world. And so then
that's about community.
Yeah, because now we're bringing in community. We've got self with the maiden, we've got the other with the mother, and now we have community. And so years ago, it was interesting because part of what the queen decides is how much do I keep of what I've experienced and how much do I let go of, right? The queen does this sorting thing. And years ago, there was a film called The Queen, and it was about your queen, right? It's about the time of Diana's death, and Queen Elizabeth had to decide, okay, there was no protocol for how to have a funeral for someone who was no longer a princess, right? And yet there was a clamoring. People needed that ritual in order to help them deal with the grief. And so the whole movie was about her deciding, okay, how much of the old do I bring in here, and how much of the new do I bring in, and how much of the old do I let go of? And so that's what the queen is always having to do, the queen within all of us. How much of my past is still relevant to who I am today? What do I want to keep? What do I want to get rid of? And
so that makes sense. Yeah.
And so again, we see this showing up with the eating disorder, because here we bring in your own inner wisdom, right? So you might ask your inner queen might say, okay, what am I trying to say with my food restriction? Right? The queen is trying to understand things. Is there an imbalance between what I'm holding on to and what I need to let go of and what I need to bring in? Right. So this is how this would come to life in the recovery process, and sovereignty. The right to create your own path in life is
I like
really
that.
an
Yeah,
important
that's
part of
powerful.
the
Yeah.
recovery process.
Mm,
And then you
mhm,
have the crone, right?
mhm,
So
mhm.
now, we have the maiden about self, the mother about other, the queen about community, and the crone is about the cosmos, right? This
Yes.
is like, so these, and again, they correspond with the 4 seasons of the year.
Yeah.
We start with spring and then summer and then fall,
Queen
autumn,
is
because
the, yeah.
autumn is the harvest, right? That's the queen.
Yeah.
But with the crone, it's winter. So winter is like, that's that time of really inner and broad and deep. Anyone that's concerned about global warming, whether you're 20 years old or 50 or 80, that's crone energy. This is like vast. So if from the queen we learn about wisdom of age, with the crone it's the wisdom of the ages, right? This is like ancestral wisdom that has been passed down. The crone is where you're connected between your ancestors and those who are to come, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
it's very vast and deep. When you're tapping into crone energy, the questions you're asking are, who am I as a soul, right? Not simply as a human being, but what's the real truth? There's truth, there's my truth, there's this truth. What's the real truth? The more, it's more, what can you be absolutely certain is true, right? This is what the crone is interested in.
So it's learning about your soul and really
Exactly.
tuning into your soul
Really
and
tuning in.
understanding that.
Like, what is my story? Right.
Yeah.
So the crone looks at the big picture. Okay. So the crone understands that the crone gets to decide your story, the end of your story, not the beginning. Right. So the crone looks at life as a 3-act play. Act 1, the script is written, right? These are your parents. Here's your ethnicity. This is where you're going to be born. This is your trauma, and this is your car accidents, and this is your eating disorder. I mean, all those things we didn't ask for. Life delivered it up. That's Act 1. Act 2 requires some improv, right? But still, the script is written. Maybe people may come and go from your life, or you may move from this place to that, but the characters still have been cast. The script has been written, and you're going along as best you can, but you're improvising, you're ad-libbing here and there. Act 3 is yours. Act 3, you get to write the story. So is your story going to be a tragedy? It sucked when you were born and it sucked when you died. That's it. Or is it going to be an inspirational tale? Whoa, she went through this, this, and this, and she accomplished this, and now others can do the same because of her example. Or is it going to be a Horatio Alger rags to riches story? Or is it going to be a comedy, an ironic comedy, like, oh my God, who would have thought that out of this is what happened? This is crone energy. Crone writes the end of the story, gives the meaning to your life. That's crone energy. So you can see how this is a big part of the recovery process, because you can say, yeah, I was abused, and because of that, I'm damaged goods, and nobody's ever going to want to love me. That can be your story.
Or
right, you can bring in crone energy and say, that would say, the soul can never be damaged. And yeah, maybe you were hurt deeply, but look what you've been able to do with that. You've shown a light for others so that they would not fall in the same trap. Or you have become an incredible parent to these lovely children, despite the way you were raised. Or, the story, the crone gets to come up with the story if you can access her energy. So that's why I think understanding these different aspects of the feminine principle can be very useful for the recovery journey.
Oh, I think we all need to come on your course, Anita.
I'm excited about it. I'm
Absolutely.
inviting everyone.
Oh, tell us about the course.
Okay, so
people can
online.
So they can find out about the course on the Light of the Moon Cafe / Four Faces.
Right, Four Faces of the Feminine is what it's called.
Right.
And if they want to get on the wait list, they can go to lightofthemooncafe.com/4 faces. And because it's not out yet, but I'm in the final stages of it's.
Oh, it'll be out soon. She's very motivated and excited, I can tell.
I love this. I've been doing this work. Oh my gosh. I've been looking at these archetypes for over 35 years. But I never felt like I could fully teach them because I felt like I needed to kind of go put my foot into each of them, not just energetically, but I really felt like I needed to live it, have some lived experience. And now that I'm 70 years old, I thought I can talk about the crone, right? But here's the thing, what's really cool is that I'm continually accessing all these different energies all the time. But the difference is when you're doing it consciously and deliberately, then you're in charge in a way. So the thing about archetypal energy, and this is what Carl Jung said, he said that what we don't bring to consciousness, we call fate. So we think stuff just happens to us because we don't know how to work with life. We don't know how to work with these energies. And so, it's the difference in my mind. If you're going down a twisty, windy, steep road in the trunk of a car, you guys call it the boot, don't you?
Yes.
See, I'm learning proper English, right? It's the boot. But if the difference between that and being behind the wheel. Now you're still going down that road and it's still a twisty, turning, windy road, but you have some agency once you're behind the wheel. You can decide, should I take this turn a little tighter or a little wider? Should I go a little slower? Maybe I need to speed up a little here.
And so rather than being blindfolded, you've got a bit of light there, or, sort of you can actually see your way clearer.
Exactly. And you kind of have a sense of, I know what I'm doing. I can handle this. So that I know right now I'm really, really, really having a hard time. I need to access my mothering energy because I'm hurting right now. And this almost feels like too painful for me to handle. Bring in mothering energy and listen, because when you have a strong inner mother, she will guide you. She'll say, let's go to the ocean. You're crying right now. So maybe mix those tears with the salty water in the ocean. Or
how can you nurture yourself?
Exactly. How do you do that? And it's so critically important that we learn how to do this because the truth is, we're really the only ones that know what we want, when we want it, how much we want it, and what's the nonsense we don't want. Right?
That is so important for people to hear. We are the only ones, really, truly. We get the guidance, but that know what we actually need at that particular point.
Right. And it's not that you have to do it all yourself, but you do have to know what it is you want and what you don't want. And so all of these energies are important for everyone's healing, I believe. I think I can't wait. I can't wait for the time that men and boys understand this energy. Because you see, for so long in the patriarchy, anything that wasn't male was disregarded, and if even if a boy wasn't a boy enough, right, it's like he was called a sissy, or so a lot of the demeaning terms had to do with maybe their emotional nature, which is a part of the feminine, which has been ridiculed and devalued and dismissed in them as well. So I feel grateful that I'm on the planet at a time when the feminine is emerging consciously. So she's been around all along, but it's been buried in the unconscious because it really hasn't felt too safe. And I see that changing right now. I see it with the Me Too movement. I see it with women finding their voice. And so they're the first to express the feminine principle. But I'm looking forward to everyone, regardless of gender, being able to embrace and appreciate these aspects of our psyche.
Yeah. So now going back now to the course and how people can access it. So if they go to the website, so the Light of the Moon Cafe website, and then tell us about the course. So how long is the course, and how can they access it?
Okay, so this is the part I haven't fully decided yet, which is why I haven't quite launched it. So I have different courses. Some are self-study and some are interactive. And the value of the interactive courses is that I'm in there. I'm responding to all comments, all questions. But of course, it's really time consuming for me. And if it's a course, then we all have to start together and end together. And so then it's not available all the time. So for example, I'm running my new Crescent Moon course right now, but the next one won't be able to start until January 2020 because I have to be there. However, I have a couple of other courses, the assertive communication course and cracking the hunger code, which are self-study, so people can do it at any time they want. And so what the course consists of, it's videos of me explaining these concepts, audios of me telling stories that fairy tales that have revealed to us these energies. Then there's drawing and activities, writing activities, so that you can explore and find them within yourself. And so I think this one is going to be a self-study. Yes. And then maybe down the road, it might be interactive, or maybe I'm thinking I might have a few live calls where people can hop on and I'll speak with them and answer questions. So that's where I'm at.
You haven't got that far yet, to that bit.
Yeah, in the next couple of weeks, I should be able to, I'll make a decision.
Yeah. Oh, how exciting. How exciting.
It's exciting for me. I've waited a long time for this, and I thought it was going to be a book, and I'm working on the book, but books are slower in a lot of ways. I can do the videos and present the information a lot faster than I can really flesh out a book. So that's what's coming first.
Wow. This is so exciting, isn't it?
It
so
is
exciting. So everybody needs to go to the Light of the Moon Cafe for faces and then register.
Well, you can get on the waiting list.
So register for the waiting list, and then oh gosh, this is amazing. So well, we're out of time now. So is there anything else you wanted to say, Anita?
No, I'm grateful to be here. I enjoy our visits. I feel like I'm right there with you, and it's really a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have you in the trunk of my car though, or the boot. Oh, Anita, well, thank you so much for sharing that. It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I knew a little bit about it, about the archetypes and things, but not in such depth. I haven't heard that. So I'm intrigued to find out about your course also. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Well, that's all for today's episode of Bulimia Sucks. So thank you to everybody for listening and for joining Anita and I today. And so come and join us on the next episode of Bulimia Sucks. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple iTunes so you never miss an episode. And check out my book, Bulimia Sucks, which is for sale on Amazon. Amazon.com, amazon.co.uk, and on wherever, really. And I look forward to chatting with you in the next episode of Bulimia Sucks. You just